Better
Okay,
hurry
well, I
up.
thought someone
Hello,
was
hello.
checking
We're
some.
unmuting. Hi, chat room. Don't go anywhere. I know this splash screen is not super enticing, but we are getting started.
So the
Same
two,
deal as last time. I don't have my mixer down here, so Mike, you good with the play acting?
Yeah. Let's do it.
so
right.
the two topics in there, Mike, both are good. Like we can go with them. I haven't looked at them.
They're very different.
Okay, perfect. We're good.
All right, so I'm gonna just do the snap. There's no claps.
Oh boy.
All right.
Is there no
Yeah.
sound effects at all? Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, exactly. I don't
So
have
we're gonna
my
have to do
mixer.
We're gonna do the timing.
We didn't have
for-
time to talk about this, but I've taken next week off and part of it is to do my spring cleaning. So
Okay.
I'll
No.
have
Just
that
need to know
sorted
the
soon.
time shit in my head. So when you say the machine goes, that I'll know.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, if you want, who's hosting?
I am.
Crofton.
Okay, so if you want to do your own claps, you can.
No, you do my claps.
I'm just doing one. I'm not going to do six.
But
If you want
do
the
it with
whole...
Ryan. Do it with the Ryan Murphy accent for Crofton,
Got an accent?
Like,
because Crofton makes Ryan Murphy do clicks for him.
well, yeah, I do.
You make?
Do the-
Do you make Ryan do the clicks?
yeah. Can you
He's
do
probably
the?
like, I guess so, Crofton.
Yeah. Don't be an asshole to Ryan Murphy.
No, I'm asking as a favor. He's doing a favor to me to get me going.
Anyways, do your best Ryan Murphy accent and then claps it.
Just do the tick tick ticks.
You guys are both confusing me. Ryan Murphy doesn't have an accent, at least far as
Just
I
do
can
the-
tell.
He just
Oh my
seems very
God,
calm.
Do the tick tick ticks.
I'm not doing the ticks. You ready?
Tick, tick, tick. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Good, Bad, or Bullshit. It's me, the Tony Stark of this show. I'm talking about Crofton Steers. With me, I got my two co-hosts coming all the way from the realm of Asgard. I'm talking about the Thor of this podcast, Bo Schwartz. How goes it, Bo?
How are you, brother? I'm Thor. Give me beer. And where's my
And-
hammer?
From the outer realm of this podcast, I'm talking about our very own Rocket Raccoon, Mike Hodgins. Mike, how are you?
I'm not a raccoon. He's a raccoon. What was it that someone else was always calling him something that he wasn't?
A rabbit.
Why,
Rabbit.
You're a rabbit.
Come on,
Yeah,
rabbits.
I like how he's a god and doesn't know the difference between.
Look, there's a
Raccoon
lot
and a
of
rabbit.
creatures in the universe,
Yeah.
you know? Like, to
You'd-
get down
you'd
to
think,
the...
You'd think after living forever, you would have figured out the difference between some.
First
basic
off,
things.
I think he said 1,500 years, which isn't forever. And secondly,
well,
getting
I know
down...
the difference, and I've only been alive 39.
Yeah,
years.
but you spent the whole time on this planet.
He
Imagine
spend
you...
enough time on Earth.
Well, maybe, I guess. I'll give you that. You win.
Yeah, he must be dumb, or he just doesn't like animals. Come with me, rabbit.
If
And who are
want
you?
to live.
Let me see. Ant-Man.
No, I said I was Tony Stark. Billionaire
Tony Stark?
playboy,
No.
you know?
That's not even close.
Yeah, no.
Philanthropist?
It's not even close.
Yeah.
Look, I even have the facial hair, sort of.
It's
What's-
like you don't have the looks, the smarts, or the money.
What
And that's basically
science?
what he-
Have you done a single science in your life?
No.
You know what? That's a good point. I didn't think about the whole science angle.
Yeah, so Ant-Man wouldn't work either.
So I guess I'm Captain America?
yeah.
Yeah.
Before he takes the serum.
You know, I'm surprised you just didn't give yourself Spider-Man, because I'm like, I would have sort of believed that, because it's sort of like dorky kid. You know, except for-
Spider-Man's also a scientist.
Yeah, Spider-Man also
Oh
has
yeah, he's
knowledge.
smart too. I like how-
Basically, a Drax without the muscles.
Who could Crofton be?
Drax is loyal to his family.
You're loyal.
Yeah, I guess.
And
I'd
you
say
have
I'm
good
even-
qualities, just not the ones that you wish you had, which is like most of us. You're human.
Oh, you know what? I'm Star-Lord. There you go.
Yeah, voice cracking. Sure, all right, I'll give you that.
Single-handedly
I like
let Thanos win by being selfish.
Yeah,
Whatever. I
What an
just
idiot.
was emotionally connected to my family and lovers.
I will
That's
say
all.
though, I really related to Thor in this movie.
you have a lot in common. You know,
When you see, actually, if you see this movie for one reason, and listeners, I know this makes no sense, but we just spent an hour talking about Game of Thrones and Endgame before the show, so bear with us. When you see Thor, you will understand why I say that from Endgame. That's all I gotta say.
I will. I just give context here. Bo and I have both seen the latest Avengers movie. Mike has not yet. Mike and Bo have both seen all of Game of Thrones. I have not yet. So we're kind of like operating the spectrum of Bo can talk to one of us
Yeah.
about one thing and the other about the other thing.
Well, I'm working through game. I'm still not where I'm not up to current on the Game of Thrones. I'm working there. It's so good, though, man. You gotta watch that.
Yeah, I did. Honestly, I will watch Game of Thrones at one point.
Good.
God, yeah.
Hey, unrelated to this, I got some kind of news to share with you guys.
Oh,
I bought an electric car, which
oh, congratulations!
Oh man, good on you.
For some reason, I thought you were gonna say you're having another child. It just
no, God,
because we've been talking for an hour and you've held that news for the show. I thought, you know.
Well, because I'm just like, oh, whatever. It's a neat thing to talk. Also, if anyone's ever listened to this show, they know that I'm like, insufferable anti-consumerist and capitalist. Buying anything expensive and new is sort of irritating. But
keyword insufferable.
Insufferable. Yeah, I think you'd like that one. But yeah, I was just like, my car's getting old, and I'm like, I really feel this needs to happen. As anyone else who's also listened to the show knows that I'm like, climate change is a real effing problem, and people need to start changing their behaviors. And I'm like, yeah, they're expensive, but I'm like, I'm just gonna do this because it needs to be done. I'm lucky enough to have a decent job. My wife's working, so I'm like, okay, we're doing it. So I'm excited. I'm getting this car.
I can tell you're excited because you announced you had an electric car, and then you rationalize why you made the purchase instead of tell us which model it is and how pretty it is.
Because the thing is, I've never owned a new vehicle ever. I've only
so this is like pristine.
Yeah, I've
new
never.
car smell.
Yeah.
Does it have new car smell?
Well, I don't even have it yet. It's ordered. It's going to be made in Korea and then brought here.
When are you going to get it?
I don't know. Maybe like it'll be like 2 months, 3 months probably.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Because it's like they're that brand new that it's like there just aren't any here. You can't even get them secondhand. The one I've got.
Well, and just make sure you take care of it and don't get in any accidents. Because I have a friend who bought a vehicle recently and got into an accident, and it's been a nightmare.
Oh really?
Because the parts aren't in circulation that much yet. With the,
was it from an electric car?
No. But just generally speaking, like when they first make a new line of cars.
Right.
Their parts aren't readily available, so try and give it a few years before you have to go find parts for it.
It would be funny if I got, because I've driven a lot in my life because I used to live in the boonies and drove every day, and now I don't drive so much. It would make me laugh if I bought this brand new car and then crash it like in a week because I'm like, I've never had even a fender bender, and knock on wood, and I've driven a lot, so I'm like, yeah. I'll try to go easy on it.
It is funny though because you told me, and I didn't even know about this when you were speculating about like, am I going to buy it last week? You about how the engine just revs or doesn't need to, so compared to a gas car, like it just goes. So that's that. Like as a driver would take, I could see you getting in an accident early as like.
Well, it goes fast. Like I mean, like they're so much better. I'm gonna gush over electric cars here just briefly, but I'm like, they're so much better than gas cars. As soon as you drive one, I took the test drive. You'll be like, why the hell would I ever want to drive a gas car again? They're so shitty. And everyone's like, because I might want to drive on a road trip once a year and I don't want to stop for half an hour to charge the car or whatever. Like, I mean, they're almost silly reasons, but like when you drive the thing, it's just awesome and fun. Like, and it's so smooth, and there's like so little moving parts. There's no like oil leaking out of the thing. No oil changes. It's like the future is now. People get the electric car.
Do you? One thing I've always been sort of curious about, like, does it make no sound?
No, it's like super silent. And if it does make sound, it's like in fact I think in the States they have some rule, I don't think this is true in Canada, where the car has to emit a noise because they're too quiet, and
that's what I'm curious about, almost / worried, like the idea being like that you've got this stealth car that could literally beam you. I'm my brain is just wired for the sounds of cars to the point that, like, at one point I'm really gonna have to change the way I even walk around or look at things or jaywalk.
But the thing is, like, honestly, like the sound of the tires and wind, it still makes noise. Like, I mean, you hear it,
right?
It's just like the motor doesn't make noise, and it always, like, I mean, I always said this for a long time. Like, my brother is like the opposite of me. He's got like giant vehicles with huge motors that spew gas and pollution in the air, like, and they were so, like, he's got this boat and it's so loud when he turns it on, it's just like rah, 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 like echoes across the water. It's ridiculous. But I always say to him, like, I'm like, that's the sound of inefficiency. Like when a motor makes sound, it's because it's wasting its energy making heat and noise. And
I'm sure
like,
he loves it when you say that to him.
well, because that's the thing. It's like people have like conflated things. They're like, listen to the sound of the power of that motor, and I'm like, that sound you're hearing is that motor being completely inefficient. It's like the electric motor is super quiet because all its power makes the thing go. It doesn't waste it like It's like someone screaming ah! in the air and being like, instead of doing something functional, they're just like screaming and yelling at you. That's what like a gas motor is like.
That sound you hear, boy, is you swimming back to shore. Get the hell out.
Yeah, and then I get in my sleek canoe and be so quiet. You know?
Be so quiet.
I like this passionate talk about the electric car.
Well, thanks for letting me chat about it. It's where I make a big purchase, and hopefully it'll last a while.
I'm excited.
Like, you don't have to tell us or the listeners how much it was, but like I think the perception around electric cars is they're extremely expensive.
Yeah, so like I'll tell you exactly what I paid because I don't care about that stuff. So in Canada, you can get the car I got was called a Kona. It's a Hyundai brand. It's like some little SUV crossover thing, and you can get a base gas model car for like $21,000. You know, which again, the most money I've ever spent on a car is $5,000. So even that is like a massive difference.
Yeah.
The electric car after a government rebate and taxes and all that was like $47,000. So that's a lot more money. And it's like, and I can't even, I'm still astounded the fact that I've put out that much money for something like this. But I mean, it's nothing compared to say the cost of a house. But it's still a lot of money, you know. But I'm just, again, I come back to people. I see people around or in similar positions to me who choose to buy something like a BMW, which costs more than an electric car, and then that's just for status. That's just for saying, "Look at me." So I'm like, people have the money. A lot of the time, they're just spending them on, you know, a Mercedes-Benz symbol or an Audi logo. Those cars are all as expensive as the car I bought. And not
and
as
how
good.
How long will it last?
1,000,000 miles is what the motor will last, because there's no moving parts, and like it just, there's nothing to break. And even when I asked the guy who knew nothing about it, like the salesman, it was so funny how they're still in gas mode. I was like, what kind of transmission does this thing have? He's like, oh, I don't know. I think it's just like a regular transmission. And then I looked it up and it's like, they have no transmission because they don't need one because the motor's so damn good. It just makes the car go from 0 to 165 kilometers an hour and it doesn't need to change gears. Like, that's awesome. Anyways.
Speaking of changing gears.
Let's change gears right now.
Let's change gears of this podcast / random topic generator, which, Mike, you've invested all this money into this.
We need to get an electric one.
Mike, do you have the machine ready?
Oh yeah. Okay. Got the choke on.
Here we. Well, you'll choke on the fumes, not on the machine. There it goes. Oh, there it is.
Oh, God. All right.
That's a bad one.
The topic today is something called cultural appropriation.
Oh boy. You guys ever seen a movie called Black Panther?
It's funny because, yeah, the other one was so polar opposite to it, like in terms of, because yeah, we only have literally one other topic in our hopper right now. Yeah, cultural appropriation. That, it seems to me, it's just like when you're. Look, I'll give a good example that describes this because this happens a lot, or a lot.
Okay. Can we all say what the first thing we think of when people say cultural appropriation?
Yeah, I had like a mental image.
Okay. Who wants to go first?
I will. This was the example I was going to give. It's when like white people go to music festivals and wear a First Nations headdress because it looks cool.
Okay.
That's cultural appropriation, and then they get shat on because it's like, why you can't wear that, you idiot! Like that's.
Well, what's the first thing you think of when somebody says cultural appropriation?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
Oh,
I gotta
really?
give it something.
For me, it was dreadlocks.
Yes, that's another big one.
That's a good one.
That's another big one.
I was like, as soon as I hear it, I'm like, dreadlocks.
That one was also kicking around in my head
Yeah,
when I.
this is the thing that's tricky about the topic, because there are things, cultures, hairstyle, music, all of this sort of stuff that's associated with culture, subcultures, that sort of thing. And then if the idea of cultural appropriation is that another culture, normally white people, take on that, be it hobby, hairstyle, whatever, right? I think rap music is often the straddles that line where for a long time, especially when it was rising in popularity, um, I don't want to say like, I'm not even sure if cultural appropriation
When
is the
Vanilla
right
Ice
term.
came along, everyone was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
what's this guy
Oh
doing?"
yeah, stuff like that, exactly, where people were uncomfortable and being, still to this day there is some. It's a lot different, but it is still seen when there's a white rapper or whatever, that there's still some of that element at play, right?
Yeah, it's funny because it is one of these things that where you can find these examples where you're like, it's clearly like an irritating thing that it's again, yeah, mostly like white people who are like, hey, we like this aspect of this other
Yeah.
culture that's not ours. Let's just take it and use it. There's that aspect, but there's also like sort of broader is it cultures are all sort of borrowing from each other constantly. Like, I mean, if you go back through history, it's like when empires like butt up against each other, they take things from the cultures that they either conquer or are trade with. Like, I mean, that's happened. So that there it's not always nefarious. Sometimes it's just like the good stuff sticks, right? And it's like and culture is malleable and it feeds off of other inputs, and and it can be a really positive thing, like where it's like, so it really is, to me it can be both things. It can be like an oppressive, obnoxious, like vestige of like colonialism, or it can be just like good stuff rises to the top, and it can come from anywhere, and
What
it
about
might come
all of
from where you don't
us?
expect.
What about all of us liking shawarma? Like, to me, food is one of the biggest cultural things that easiest things to cross cultural borders, because we all enjoy food, but we may enjoy food a certain way, and then as part of like the conquerors, let's say, we start adopting the cuisine for entertainment of the people we've conquered or the people who are a minority, and so now we're appropriating culture because food is very much intertwined with culture.
But is it, just to be clear here, because I honestly don't know, is it like if I'm consuming something, be it music or food or whatever, or if I
You're culturally
open my own.
appropriating Italy by loving pizza so much.
No, but no, I'm just saying, like, I associate it in my mind as I open my own shawarma store. And I'm like, hey guys, I make shawarma now, best shawarma in the city. And people are like, whoa, buddy,
Yeah,
come
be
on,
like,
you know.
you're not Lebanese,
But,
dude.
but
F
like
off.
going to like every shawarma place I go to, it's like, it's a Lebanese shawarma place, and so as Mike was saying about the taking on aspects of different cultures and like in sharing in cuisine and in different things, like it just seems like that's what you're doing. The cultural appropriation would be if I look to take it on myself some way,
Yeah,
or
it's funny. It's actually a pretty good example, I think, of the two sides of this, because, like, I heard recently that, so like British people. I've not been to Britain, but that
Are
basically at this
they,
point they
are
consider
aren't they just called the English, or are they British?
whatever. No, I think
I've been there.
no, I
Okay,
think
starting to get
England,
racist. Let's continue.
England is one thing, but Britain is the British Isles and their whole like empire of like effing over the world in the 19th century and 18th
Whoa.
century. They did. Come on. So anyways, what I was going to say from that was that I heard something where in Britain they basically consider like curry, like Indian curry, like British food. They're just like, yeah, it's Brit. Like it's so involved in British culture, curry, that it's no longer like Indian food or foreign food or whatever you would want to call it. It's just British food, but it's like clearly it's because they were like, you know, sitting in India there, being like,
They're like, "Oh, this
we're
food's good," and
yeah, we
what do you call this food? Curry? It's now English food.
yeah, it sounds, but I mean, so it's like a little bit like okay, that feels a bit like cultural appropriation in the sense that it's clearly not from Britain, like it's from India, and now everyone in it's good food. I like Indian food. Who doesn't like it? So
Are you talking about British curry
British curry? Yeah, I guess
from Britain?
Is there a
But
curry
then-
called British curry?
No, there's not. I'm
No.
just.
If there was, it would just be it's boiled potatoes with boiled meat in it. There's no spices.
No, there's tea in it. There's tea poured into it.
It's boiled in tea.
Actually, doesn't
so
tea
yeah,
come
so-
from India too? Isn't the fact that tea time's a big
yes, tea
deal in
comes from
England?
India.
Is like they didn't have tea till they started going to India and bringing that shit back to fucking England.
But hey, wait. That's
Wait.
a good. Oh, go ahead.
Let
Mike.
me just
Sorry.
finish my one thought because yes, I think it's a good point. Like so you have these cultures like Britain is like okay, curry is like British food now. We like it, and you're like okay, they're appropriating clearly a cuisine from India. It's not of British origin. But then another interesting thing, if you think of like Indian food, I think a lot of times you get like there's a lot of tomatoes in it. Or a lot of curries will have like a tomato base and it's in there, and it's delicious or whatever, and then. Tomatoes, I think I've said this before on this podcast because I always find this an awesome fact, come from South America. Like there's no tomatoes in Eurasia, in Europe, there never was. They're all from the Americas. So you're like, okay, you associate that with Indian cooking. Or like I like my shawarma with tomatoes on it. I'm like, those things are not from anywhere. They're only from like the Americas.
Or Italian food for that matter.
Yeah,
All
Italian food, perfect example. Like so tomato based. There's never any tomatoes in Italy before Europeans went to South America and then brought it back. So it's kind of like were they appropriating South America? It's like
I mean,
I
think it's just
was changing based on an input from someplace else.
It's cultural appropriation, not appropriation of resources and food.
But what I mean is like it's like cultures borrow from stuff and they change,
Right.
and when they're influenced by other things they morph and change, and sometimes that could be something like an ingredient in food, sometimes it could be a good idea, or awesome music,
So where does that line hit where if I put my dread in my hair I'm appropriating I don't know, black culture as a white guy?
Depends who you talk to, and that's where it gets tricky, right? Like some people would be like, "You're white with dreadlocks." Like we have a friend who is a white guy with dreadlocks, and he was in Montreal one time and got essentially accosted for having dreadlocks. You know?
Really?
And, yeah.
Accosted
So
I don't
By
think I
who?
heard that story.
oh, maybe I'm getting
By
my
the
white
police?
friends with dreadlocks mixed up. No, by a group of young students, African Canadian students who were like, anyway, it was and essentially made to feel bad. And I am getting my dreadlocked white guys mixed up, Mike. It's geez,
You don't
know
have
him
to
too.
name the person.
Okay, I won't. But he's
It's
from
not who I'm
Kelowna.
thinking of.
No. But yeah. Anyway, what I was gonna just getting back to like the when the term cultural appropriation is used, like is it ever used in a way that is not involving white people taking like on culture from another culture? Like the example that Bo mentioned, tea. Like if I was all of a sudden like having tea time at home and every day, oh, it's tea, and like and big into tea as a Canadian, would people be accusing me of culturally reappropriating stuff from the British?
Well,
Would that or
that particular example is a bit
So
because
I think there's a power dynamic at play with cultural appropriation, because appropriating something is generally a criminal act in most legal, like, and maybe
No, or
not criminal, but it's often used in a pejorative sense, I suppose, is what I appropriated that money, and the misappropriation of money, like it's in that family of words. So the idea that a culture is taking upon itself to say we're taking this for ourselves, we're deciding. I think it's different if the culture says oh, British, you guys are so wonderful. You came to our country and were really nice. Here's some tea. You'll really enjoy this. Let's form trade relations and share in culture. I don't think cultural appropriation fits in there. I think it's when it's like a one way, like, you're underprivileged, I'm privileged, but I think your underprivileged life is cool and romanticized, so I'm going to dress up like a gangster. Like I'm, like I live a life in a ghetto, and the life I hear about, I'm going to emulate those things that I hear. And that privileged person is just like, I think something's cool, so I want to, live it and express it and do whatever. And the underprivileged person's going like, my life sucks. Why the hell do you like? We just do this so that we have something for our own, and you can't even let us have that. You're going to take that too. And I think that's where that comes from. Because, like, if you're First Nations in this country and you were slaughtered and displaced and feel that your land was taken from you, and then the people that you feel that might have been responsible, ancestors or whatever, also wear your, sacred or revered garbs as a fashion accessory to go dancing in the club or something, you're kind of going to feel something.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It's
And
true.
like,
It's super obnoxious.
It's like there's a music video and they're like, oh, Shakira's dressed up as a Native American. He would have been done. You know, and it's like that's, but it's cultural appropriation, right?
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
I agree. I mean, I think you're really on
There's a GIF.
yeah. One of the clips is gonna haunt Bo. But
not the one
yeah,
where I said I loved Hitler.
I think you're really right about the power dynamic thing, because I was thinking, it's interesting when it's like you see other cultures sort of mimicking, say, like for lack of a better word, like American culture. It's like leaders of nations in Asia or Africa who wear like suits and ties, and you're like, well, where did the suits and ties come from? Like British and it's like, it's not traditional wear, but then you'd be like, but the difference is those are, so you'd say, are they appropriating like American or British descended culture? And you'd say no. You'd say that's a dominant culture which is pushing its norms on people. So like, I think that power dynamic is really interesting, because I mean, I would never think to say that about them, because there is dominant culture, which again sort of just pushes what's normal and what's expected on people. So you see that, and then there's cultural appropriation, which I think, again, the example of the of the white person wearing, or like the white girl wearing like hoop earrings. I know that's often a big thing that you'll hear about, being like, you shouldn't be wearing those kind of thing. Where it's just, again, it's just like a smaller thing, but I don't know. I think
my mom wears hoop earrings.
She's racist. I mean, yeah, I know, and that's why it seems.
Well, that's
silly
where,
sometimes.
but it's funny that you
silly.
say the racist thing, because the people doing the cultural appropriation do not see it that way. I think it comes from a place of fascination, curiosity, and that's where the frustrating thing about cultural appropriation is, because like, but it's so cool. I want to be a part of the coolness. Right? Like, to me, like, cultural appropriation comes from looking at something, maybe misunderstanding it, but wanting it to use it for some purpose. I don't think it's nefarious like racism actually is, which is like,
it's Rastafari.
They are lesser than us because their brains are smaller and we have the science to back it up.
Yeah, like I mean, but I think racism operates on those different levels. There's one where there's like overt, like you're a Nazi and you hate other people, and there's one where you're just like an ignorant asshole who's like, I think it'd be cool to wear a headdress to the music festival because it's awesome, and being like, actually those headdresses have really specific cultural value. You can't just, it's not just, you don't just wear them because it looks cool. And the same is true of all other kinds of cultures, because one is racist because it's overt, and one is just because it's ignorant, and it's still annoying.
Yeah, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that it's difficult for them to understand why they could be called racist. Because usually that's the argument, right? But
there's X levels of ignorance too. Like Mike's version of ignorance is somebody that knows what they're doing, but doesn't think there's any harm in it and thinks that it's cool. But I know a lot of like people some people who got their dreadlocks who don't really recognize or understand why it would in any way be an issue. Same thing with the hoop earrings, right? but if you go to a music festival with a headdress, or you get this is in the levels of ignorance. If you get the Asian or kanji
Oh
tattoos,
yeah, those. Every
sorry,
time I see those, there's so many of them. I'm like, oh,
on your
why are you
body
doing that?
with. And so you know what you're doing at that point. You're like, yeah, put a
It's in
kanji
Mandarin.
symbol,
I don't
make it.
speak it.
Yeah, make it say something awesome, and then they find out like that they've put something ridiculous on their body. It happens seems to celebrities all the time. I put peace and love. Actually, that says dog penis.
Well, if I was an
It's-
Asian tattoo artist, I would be writing all kinds of terrible shit on
oh
there
God,
too.
yeah.
Yeah,
Just
Another
go ahead.
part of cultural appropriation too, and I don't know if not that we're really moving on, but just to bring it into the fold too, is it gets brought up a lot in movies and television and motion picture media. The depiction not only cultures like of race, but of of race, but of also like sexuality, like where you have straight actors playing roles that are for gay or trans people, or writers or producers of white people writing movies for black people about black, and doing that, and that being a sort of condescension where they're sensationalizing the things that they see or think are cool about it, and not really telling meaningful or true stories, or making true art because you'd rather see like the Ghost in the Shell movie, the whitewashing that occurred because Scarlett Johansson played the lead instead of an actual Japanese woman. That movie, like it was that there was a lot of discussion about that. So things like that also fall into that.
Do you know that John Wayne played Genghis Khan in a movie?
But I mean,
That's so dumb.
It's dumb, but at the same time, like I think in the history of theater, I mean, we tend to think of motion picture a little differently, but anyone can play any role. Like there's if you want to take a Shakespeare play and reverse all the genders of the characters, like you can do that. Like it's just playing.
But increasingly, yeah, they're saying like you shouldn't like, and there's been some talk of this recently with there's a couple movies coming out with I think trans stories, and they'd be like, okay, look, if you're gonna do that, you gotta hire a trans actor should play that, or something along those, or deaf actor. I think I heard that too, where it's like you had actors. There's something, and it's like people pretending to be deaf. It's there are deaf actors
from Tropic Thunder. You never go full retard. That's Ben Stiller. It's the same. I mean, it's appropriation, right? Like you're gonna most of the time, if it's a mentally handicapped individual in a film, it's Ben Stiller or Tom Cruise.
I don't know if I don't want to
Jodie Foster.
Slide into political correctness, because I feel like there's a little bit of like, I don't know if we've talked about that, but maybe these things overlap as well. But like again, back to the appropriation thing, because it's one thing. It's like entertainment. It's kind of like, okay, yeah, there's probably some of that going on there, but it's more like the really like taking stuff. I feel like music is a pretty prime example of like. Again, like white people getting into hip hop. Like when I think of hip hop, I think of my brother, like white kid in like rural Quebec who's like loves like Public Enemy and all this stuff. I'm like, you're like, well, there's what nothing about what's being said in that music it applies to the life he lived, or and you're just kind of like, but it's cool, and you want to be part of the like that movement, and it's obnoxious because you're from a culture that's already the one that's dominant, right? So, and then this cool music comes out, no one ever heard anything like it, hip hop's on the rise, people are like, yeah, I want in on this, and black people probably rightly could be like, screw off, like it's not for you really. But I don't know that it was ever, it's also really popular. Like, is it bad that people like stuff that's not from their culture?
I think liking something is different than appropriating it for the symbols for yourself. So if you like,
so you think
I love rap music. I listen to so much rap music. Everyone I meet always assumes I'm a rock and roll head and want to talk about rock and roll. Like I project no symbols to anyone,
but
to communicate just how much like rap I like rap music and how much I listen to it. And what I'm saying is, but people who like it will maybe younger, less wise, or maybe they are in fact racist, just adopt those symbols and things.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, so yeah, you're doing it like the right way. You appreciating the thing. It doesn't. Yeah, you wouldn't assume that from you. But I think of all these dudes in high school that I know who like dress like rappers, and like it just
Yeah,
looks
yeah.
so awkward
You
and
know,
not.
remember how many of you out there flipped your pants backwards when Criss Cross asked you to jump? You guys remember that?
I did not.
You
Did
don't remember
you?
that? No,
No,
I
no.
didn't.
Of course, I remember that.
I
My
didn't, but
brother did.
I can name a few
Did he
people.
go to
Wow.
school like that?
Yeah, yeah.
He did.
And I remember at the time I was like,
He missed the bus, but he'll never, ever, ever gonna do it again.
and I remember as a privileged white kid in a white world, going, man, that's so cool. I wish my mom would let me do that.
Really?
yeah. I was like, oh, it's so risky. I mean, come on. I think we were like 10 or 11. Imagine going to school with your pants backwards and defying, I'm sure teachers would give these kids a hard time for it. And
But here's the other funny. It's kind of like a lot of this stuff is really like it's like the whole talk of cultural appropriation is like society shouting at you, stay in your lane, to whoever you are, whatever your identity is, like stay there. Because I mean, I think of because I knew you in high school, Bo, and I didn't know you well in junior high school, but I recall when Kurt Cobain died, and it was a big deal.
Oh man, I was sad.
You were sad. I remember.
I was
barely
crying.
knew you, but I remember that you were sad. Yeah, I mean, whatever. He was a powerful figure. But I also remember that you must have gone through a grunge phase because I recall you wearing like it was like
I
plaid
had
shirts
cardigans,
around.
ripped jeans, and weird, ironic
But
shirts.
the thing is, look, a white guy dressing in grunge. No one's gonna say boo to that. They're like, yeah, of course, that makes total sense. It's like just fine.
But if aliens invaded and conquered our planet and they started showing up in grunge gear, we'd be like, stop culturally appropriating the white people of Earth. Alien conquering bastards.
Here's a kind of question that's so is this whole thing have a kind of double standard too? Like, so we're talking about like obviously white people are dominant culture, we're like that, so it's like when we take over a culture or it's cultural appropriation, or I'm just putting this out there as a question.
Sure.
But like I've seen people of color who dress in like what I would call traditional like punk garb, like the full punk look, which is definitely like a thing that came out of like British society in a certain era and American society in a certain era. And I never thought to think like, is that cultural appropriation? Like if you're a person of color and you're like, I like the punk scene, and I think people would say like rightly that like, oh, that's a political movement or whatever, but it also is a style movement and a whatever. And is it, I guess I'm asking, do you guys think it's a double standard where it's like, if a white person adopts some culture they think is appealing or resonates with them, that's from a minority group, that's cultural appropriation. And if it goes the other way, someone from a minority group, like really something that resonates with them about a culture that is more in the dominant sphere, that's like there's no problem. So is that bad?
So two answers. First off, this is the same question I asked earlier, except I used the example of me in England, which is probably not a good example.
Because you basically are from England.
But the idea being like, is it only an issue for white people? Is the term only used for white people? I think if you look at the term, then it would reflect any culture, but it's used more as a pejorative, and in which case it is only used mostly to the culture in power taking on the styles or fads or interests or of subcultures, minority subcultures. So I don't think, to answer your question, I don't think that you would say that it is cultural appropriation. I really do think there is a double standard, but I think that double standard acts in a way like you talked about it earlier, Mike, when you were saying like it's and I think Bo did too, where as an affluent, culturally predominant, in this case it's still white males, then anything that you take on outside of that group definitely feels like salt in the wound a little bit, right? Like it's like I'm taking on, I have all these advantages at my feet, and now I'm also taking on your thing, right? And so that's why I think it's used more. But if you get down to the absolute terminology of it and say like, what is cultural appropriation? Well, it could be done in any which way. It's just not used that
Yeah,
way.
I just don't
Like,
think we call it that word when it's like in a positive light. And I'm sure like someone who's very well versed in history or whatever can apply the the colonization of Europe to other countries, and we feel so far removed from it because none of us have ever colonized or been a part of a world that involved in colonization. Yet where we are is the product of all of that expanse that happened when Europe decided to go everywhere else in the world and take what it could.
Subjugate
Like
everyone,
the
yeah.
fact that we are in the position that we're in now is a result of we are affected or benefit from that period of time 400 years ago. And that's, I think, the view that you can take sometimes when you're looking at why is it always white people that are appropriating things. It's because, yes, we personally did not colonize anything or even condone a government which does that kind of stuff, but we're here because of it, and so we're still the product of it. And I think that's why it works that way, because I feel like if I never heard of India before, and I go there, they like me, I'm peaceful towards them, they teach me to make curry, I bring it back to where I'm from. That's not cultural appropriation. That's just sharing in culture. Like I think when a minority group wants to be part of a popular white culture group, like the punk example, usually that's awesome. You wouldn't meet a white person who would think that was bad, or any person, and so I think that's because most of the time the exchange and sharing of culture and of values is really important to find people that you share those things with, or that you learn new things from, or think something is cool. I think where people cringe or where it gets to be racist is when a certain group of race or of sexuality that's been historically maligned or mistreated and still to this day are have that experience, is when people say it's appropriation versus just the genuine sharing of cool shit. Because I'm no doubt if you were to go to First Nations community and show a genuine interest in their culture, beliefs, and history, they would gladly share that with you, and that over time, that you would be allowed entrance and gateway into these things if you met the cultural needs. But then, they don't want you to go back to where you're from or go on to Instagram and be like, with First Nations, y'all, check out my shit, or what, like that's appropriation.
there's
right?
another
Like,
gift for you.
Yeah, it is interesting, and the subject seems so muddy to me still. Like because I totally am on board with all that stuff you said, and it's like I completely agree. And I think the whole point of privilege is the fact that you have the so I'm a white dude, and I happen to like things like camping and ultimate frisbee, which is very like of a white dude in Canada thing. People, yeah, exactly right. It's like a stereotype, but I'm like, I like those things. It's fine, but I also have I have the privilege to feel completely comfortable doing the things that are attributed to me, and also I probably have the privilege to like if I felt like wearing I don't know hip hop clothes, I could, and that's the privilege, and that's the whole part of being part of that dominant culture. Even though you didn't do anything to establish it, you still benefit from it. Like I get that, and I'm totally on board with it. You want to say something, Croft?
Well, I was just gonna say, to your point about it being muddy, and I think that you're 100% right. It is complicated and it is tough, and it's hard to say what is insulting to one person and what is insulting to another. I just think, in a way, if you are not crediting the source, then to a certain extent, or showing deference to the source, then that is where it's kind of at its most nefarious or toxic.
I don't know. If I dress up like Snoop Dogg and be like, "Yo, I love black people. I love Snoop Dogg," just shake your head and be like, credit. I don't think crediting the source does it.
No, but I mean, I do think it's there's a difference between what you said about going to India and having food, made for you there, and like taking a recipe home and something like. I open my shawarma store and I say like, I make the best shawarma in the city. I am now taking on this, and I'm taking ownership of this culturally significant cuisine, and that feels wrong. Whereas on the other hand, if I say like, like if I open a shawarma store based on like having been to Lebanon and having made all sorts of friends and then working in a kitchen there and then coming over here and being like, okay, I'm going to try this, putting up photos maybe of my experience on the wall and making it very clear, like what my linkages are and stuff like that, then it feels, I don't know, it feels more palatable in that way. Right.
Yeah,
And,
if you're being genuine about it, I guess.
if if you just are clearly taking something because you want it, or even are taking credit for something in some way, and that's where I think that the music becomes so like not people enjoying rap music, but when white people started rapping, the idea being like, well, now they're making money off this thing that's culturally significant to us, right? And that's where it becomes like, as soon as you're profiting on it, um that feels like the worst kind, as opposed to just like putting the kanji symbol on yourself and looking like an idiot. Like, that's like, okay, it's still cultural appropriation, but and some people may take that the wrong way, but at least you're not like making money off it or actively exploiting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the exploitation is another aspect, and then Hollywood has that, right? Where it's like, we're gonna make a movie about black people for white people, and it's gonna be super racist, but that's not the audience we're trying to please. We're trying to please white people, with whatever this product is, and so that's cultural appropriation for sure.
To further muddy this an already muddy topic, so think about this, because this is all, I'm completely on board with what we've been talking about, especially around like it's in terms of trends, where again it's mostly the issue when it's like white people kind of like profiting from or getting social benefit from a culture on the fringes or whatever. But when it comes to like the individual, like an individual person, so do you guys remember that there was this pretty famous story? I can't remember the details, but there was this woman who worked for like the NAACP in the States or something like that, and then it came out that she was like white, but she was trying to pass herself off as being black. Do you remember this? Like,
oh, this sounds familiar.
So yeah, it was a big thing, and like, and it came out that she was like she had no black ancestors. She just was like, kind of just passed herself up is being black. And now, so you'd be like, okay, cultural appropriation. She's like, why is she doing that? And you get all angry. But then think about this aspect of like people. So it came up briefly, like trans people. Okay, like, so people who really feel like they were born the wrong way, right? And they feel like they're born in a man's body, but they know in their heart they're a woman. And I think we're on the right page, and generally where we're like not trying to question that and be like, yeah, that's like, your feelings are legitimate. Like, this is a real thing. And in the culture we live in, I think mostly in the mainstream, we're trying to be like supportive of these people, and I'm absolutely amped to be like, yes, you should be who you feel. But what if you feel like this woman, where you're born like a white person, but you feel in your heart that you're a person of color? Like, I think she's made statements like that where she felt like she was a person.
I mean, there's definitely been Jerry Springer and Dr. Phil episodes with that kind of content.
Well, but the thing is, I think it's a real conversation, because it's like, but what if you really, really identify with these other cultures, and you're in earnest about it? You're not trying to profit. It just feels right for you. And going camping and playing ultimate frisbee like other white people feels I hate it. So, you know what I mean? Is that?
Before anyone wants to jump down Mike's throat for saying that, because to some people it might be obvious, but the sexuality thing and your identity, I think, is very different than race. Like, race is like, it's like cold hard reality. Like, cold hard reality is.
But people would say the exact same thing. Look, you were born with those parts, The same way you were born with the color of your skin. Like I think there's a lot of
Yeah, it's
similarities.
cultural appropriation. It's not racial
Yeah,
appropriation.
exactly. It's cultural. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean,
but
you might
if you
say that
think
that a
you're of,
man is appropriating the culture of womanhood because
but if you literally have no ancestors from Africa, like what do you say? Like,
well, we all
like,
have ancestors from Africa, actually.
okay, well, but
Don't
from
worry, I'm
when
not
the
gonna
You're
start-
swimming back to shore, boy.
from when the relevant culture was there.
Yes,
there's a
I
bit
hear
of a
you.
reality
Just making a
check.
bad joke.
There's a bit of a reality check when it comes to race versus that. However,
Look,
if
I'm
you're
not saying
if
she
you're
was right or
if
anything.
you're a white person that grew up in Africa, knew nothing but black people for whatever reason, that's you were adopted, you were left somewhere, and you identify with that culture and not the culture of the other one. I mean, that's the subject of movies, and that's your culture. Like your
Guys,
culture is where you're from.
I'm sorry. I gotta interrupt here. I'm having a little bit of an emergency at home right now, so I'm gonna have to leave.
Do
I
you
know
want to throw your verdict out quick?
we're
So you don't have to
well.
come
I
back?
just thought we could roll into verdicts like
Yeah,
right
all right.
now,
Let's
and
do
if
it.
somebody could
The baby
close up
puke.
the
The baby puke's rolling hard. I take
Yeah,
it. So
it-
verdict
it
time.
is-
Here it goes.
Your fireman animal. You go first, Croft, and then you can hit the road.
Order, I say.
Order in the court. Let's let Dada go first.
Sorry, guys. Sorry,
No problem.
but honestly, like this is one of those ones where because, as Mike said, it was so muddy. It's very difficult. There's so many facets to it, and it's one of those topics where I guarantee you, like this in this episode, we've offended about a zillion people, and apologies for that. But such is the difficulty of navigating something like cultural appropriation, or even like sharing, or like melting pot terminology. Any of that sort of stuff it is tricky. It's really hard because I don't want to deny anybody, personal pleasures or cultural experiences by just coming down hard on cultural appropriation. At the same time, you don't want to see any exploitation going on. So it's a fine line to walk, and I think it's some cases on a case by case basis. You'd look at some cultural appropriation and you'd say like, well, this is okay. I'm comfortable with this, or this person is getting something out of this that's valuable to them. And then other times you're like, whoa, that is not okay. And you sort of, it's a person by person thing, but sometimes, there's extremes where it's pretty clear, like this is not okay. And this is okay because of the murkiness, because of the confusion, because of the fact that I don't feel particularly strongly one way or another. I'm going to fall in the middle and say this is a cultural appropriation is bullshit.
Oh, so we got the
Well
cow.
said.
And it's tricky. It's tricky. I still don't even know if that makes sense. But I now have to leave you, and this is kind of interesting for me because I have actually no real idea what either of you guys are going to say. So I'm going to listen to this show afterwards, and then I'm gonna figure it out. So it will be interesting.
And then you can write in, and we can read your letter on.
Yeah, you guys were so dumb.
Idiots.
All right, thank you.
See you,
Thanks,
Crofton.
listener. Bye.
Thank you. All right, cultural appropriation. Do you want to go first, or should it be me?
Sure. Yeah, look, I'll go. I agree with a lot of what Crofton said, so he's going to like this when he hears it later. It is muddy, I think, for a lot of different reasons, and I think these are legitimate reasons, and it's one of those things where it's like when we were talking about it, there was like. I was getting confused even talking about it and feeling awkward asking some of those questions because I'm like, I don't even feel like I should be asking a question like that, though I feel the discussion is always good to have, but whatever. I want to talk about everything.
Mm-hmm.
But when I think about cultural appropriation, I think it's one of those things of like, I know it when I see it kind of thing. Things that just exist in that plane where it's like, what is a cultural appropriation? Is it eating food from another culture? Like, no, I don't think so. Is it like the white person at the music wearing the headdress? You're like, yeah. And I know it when I see it. And it usually makes you feel a bit like cringing or like, oh, that person shouldn't really be doing that, or showing that that person, when it tweaks that thing in you where this person is not aware of what they're doing, I think the idea of cultural appropriation comes in. But I do think it bumps up heavily against that, like, culture share, culture borrows, culture is fluid. Not so, and that can be a really wonderful and awesome thing. And I think we need to do more of that. Like, I think in the world, we don't want to find ourselves in silos of like, you're here, you're like this, stay there. I'm like this, stay there, and keep to your own stuff, and that's it. I feel like that's not a progressive world. And I feel like if we need to get to a place where we all can love each other for who we are, we need to be able to accept other cultures, to be able to embrace them, to be able to take the good, leave the bad. And yes, hopefully not do it in an exploitive manner, because that's the element of it that's bad. So, I mean, so yeah, so because it's so muddy, I'm going to agree with Crofton's verdict and say that cultural appropriation is bullshit. And it's bullshit. Like, it's a bullshitty thing to do, and when you're unaware of it, when you're benefiting off others, especially when you're part of the dominant culture. But it's also bullshit in that sometimes it's just people being influenced by something great, and they want to expand on it, and that can be a really good thing too. So yeah, bullshit's where I land.
All right, that
Hey,
sounds
Bo,
really good.
last word to you.
Last word to me. All right. So, I mean, I think we're all on the same page, except I'm pretty sure cultural appropriation is one of those terms that is basically just bad. Like, I don't think it's ever intended use of the term was ever meant to be good, now that we've talked it out. But I can see us like thinking, no, there's like cases where the appropriation of culture is normal or okay, or the negative impact is overblown by the hyperbole of people on the far end of who argue these types of things. But the more we think about it, the more I just feel like they don't really call it cultural appropriation if people share in cultural symbols and traditions when work is done in earnest. I think the thing I think most about, but I didn't really bring it up, but I'll roll it into my verdict, is that wow, it's going to be 20 years ago now. Well, I mean, it's not
Getting
quite
old.
20 years, but yeah, when as a young man, I had a girlfriend. She was Muslim, and there was talk of kids, although that never panned out. But I gave thought to the future. That seemed like a possibility, and she was religious, and I was still grappling with the idea that I was going to be an atheist, I think. But I saw no problem in, okay, well, if this means something to you, then I'm going to read the Quran. I've fasted for Ramadan and celebrated Eid with the Muslim side of my family at that time. Not that we were married, so I can't really say that, but, those traditions I was taking on. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, now that I'm fully an atheist, I would never make that decision that way again. But at the time, my intention was, I think, good, or at least came from a good place. And I don't think it was for the benefit of thinking about raising children and having parental cohesion and thinking I could just overcome my own personality. And maybe that's part of the delusion, but in no way was I appropriating culture. I was showing deference to it. I was trying to study. In fact, at some points it was like, you know more than we do. The white person that knows more about the minority culture than the actual people do, because they're eager to be accepted or eager to be validated as part of that thing. And I think I just mainly wanted approval in this regard, especially in Islam. They're a little strict about things. So, and not that it was like that kind of strict, but just generally speaking, like, Ramadan is a celebration where you do not eat during sunlight hours for 30 days. That's kind of hardcore. It's not like Christmas where you just, or even Lent where you just starve for a day or something. I don't even know what Lent is. Isn't there one of them in Christianity where you starve? You fast for a day? It's Lent, isn't it?
Yeah. No, yes, you give something up. I don't know.
And it's
I
not
think it
just
can be-
it's not just not eating. There's no fornicating during these there's nothing.
no
Fuck off.
fornicating.
No drinking water. So like it's pretty intense. I don't know about the water. I'm pretty sure the water thing's true, but I'm sure a lot of Muslims actually probably break that. I've come to learn that a lot of Muslims secretly break a lot of things that, if you were just to watch it on news or see it depicted in media, that they wouldn't do. But I don't consider that appropriation, I guess, just to bring it back to my verdict. I don't consider my acts there of doing things that were not culturally endemic to me an act of appropriation. And certainly the culture of Islam is a minority in this country, but the world over, Islam's quite flourishing. But still. What's
Remember
that?
your verdict?
I know. Sorry, I'm rambling. So I will.
It's an interesting story. Like, I mean, that I'm not trying to cut you off.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
yeah. I'm kind of lost in. I'm going down memory lane a little bit here, but like, it's not appropriation. So I think what I'm trying to say is it has to do really with the intent, and I feel like the term cultural appropriation suggests that when you are labeling it as such, it means the intent, not the deliberate intent, but the overall intent, whether it's accidental or intentional, is harmful, is insulting, is disrespectful, and ultimately self-serving. Like in the case of making money, dressing up, people like just misrepresenting the culture for consumption by the majority culture for their entertainment. So I've got to actually say cultural appropriation in all shapes and forms are bad, but only because the term itself, I think, actually just is a bad term. And I think there are other words, maybe like, I don't know, assimilation or something, or cultural exchange, that better serve the idea of sharing cultural values among different population types.
Yeah, I mean that is an interesting point.
Yeah, I'm just having a hard time with the term, and
Yeah, I think you're kind of right about that in the sense that the term is largely negative.
I realize
And
appropriation is
there probably is some positive term that means the same thing as a cultural appropriation, but when it's like when we all like it.
Well, like at the top of the show, I was kind of talking about how appropriation of funds is a crime. I realize the word appropriation isn't always used in a criminal sense, but misappropriation, I don't know, appropriation just carries with it a tone of a group decided on its own to make decisions about something and the other group doesn't get a say in
Well,
it.
yeah,
Something
it's
about
funny
that
'cause
word.
when they use a term like inclusion or multiculturalism, that's generally seen as like a positive thing. Well, it depends who you are, of course. If you're a racist, you don't like that stuff. But if you're like a regular person who believes in progress, you're like, okay, yeah, it's good to have that stuff. Like, we want to see these different cultures and contributing and mingling amongst each other. Certainly, the country we live in is pretty multicultural. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you're probably right. Like, there's other terms that will describe those kind of more positive aspects. But yeah, well, good verdict, Bo. You did get off there.
Whoa, I didn't
You
get
were
off.
no, I don't mean that. I mean you were like
I did go off, but
he's in a cave in his own mind.
it's partly because Crofton had to leave early, and I was gonna go there anyways, I guess. So
I actually enjoyed the story because I think it is relevant, especially when you find yourself kind of like with another culture and wondering what you should do and behave and how it's like.
I mean, no matter what race you are, when you fall in love with somebody and meet their family, there are customs and norms that you may have to assimilate into your life as being part of their family, and vice versa, right? And so when it's across larger cultural boundaries, like a Christian and a Muslim getting together, not that I would say that I am a Christian, but I am from Christian stock.
You're of the culture.
I am from Christian stock, so like, I mean, I still say Jesus Christ all the time, and it's.
I think if you were a good Christian, you wouldn't say that.
Yeah, but I still feel like saying it gives it power. Like having such deeply rooted habit that when you curse, the things evoke Christian culture means that you are of Christian culture.
Yeah.
Like even if you say you're an atheist, you still carry those habits with you.
Yeah, it's a cultural thing. All right, you want to wrap it up?
All right, I will wrap it up. How do we do this? If you want to wrap it up, go to a store, go to a drugstore. No, you can email us at goodbadbull@gmail.com. That's where we receive emails. And if you send us an email, we will read it on the show, which will eventually air, I promise you. if you're interested in following us, just to know when we go live, we do broadcast live on Twitch, and sometimes there's lively conversation. And here right now, it's our moderator Monica who's just telling us to delete this video because
It's so bad.
it's white people talking about culture. But I mean, it's better than not talking about it. But anyways, if you want to follow us and find out when we go live to talk about things badly, you can do that on Twitter at GoodBadBull. There's a Facebook page you can like it, but mostly go to goodbadbull.com. Give that a bookmark. That's where you can find links to all of our other stuff there. And that's the place to be. Finally, also links to subscribe to the show. We have our show on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, all the places. So if there's a place you prefer to watch, we've got you covered there. I'm not going to say if. I'm going to thank our supporters on Patreon. We do run a Patreon page, which is a microtransaction site, which allows listeners to tip us, basically, or give us a little bit of money to help us keep the lights on. We usually use it to pay for web hosting, and we put a little extra change in our pocket from it. We have a page there, so if you'd like to help support the show, you enjoy it, we bring you laughs or frustrations, but the fun kind of frustration, you can go to there and give us $1 a month, and we'd greatly appreciate it. So that's over on patreon.com/goodbadbull. Finally, you can find Crofton Steers on Twitter. If you tweet at him, he will respond to you because he's very desperate to have social media engagement in order to keep up with me. Since he's not here, I can talk all kinds of shit. Hi, Crofton. You can follow him at Crofton Steers. Michael, if people want to...
podcast, did you say, where he's the...
Dungeons and Diapers. He does a podcast with a wonderful young podcaster, man. Ryan Murphy. And by the way, if he's being abusive towards Ryan Murphy, you let me know. He makes him do the tick tick ticks, and I think maybe Ryan shouldn't.
Yeah, Ryan, don't placate that guy.
So if anything bad's going on, let me know. But Michael, if people want to reach out to you, and I feel like people really benefit from engaging with you on conversations.
You think so?
Well, as long as they consider like a good conversation that is not going to be supportive of what you say, but that might be. I always feel like I learn something when we talk about stuff.
I love
spar with our ideas.
I always wonder sometimes, like, I would love this. I don't know if it would ever be a Patreon goal, anyone would ever support, but I'm like I would love to just have like a one-on-one Skype call with a listener or some random person and just literally talk about some topic, because I'm like, I like talking with everyone. Yeah. So yeah, if you want to get in touch with me, I don't know, email the show and then
email the show. That's awesome. Actually, we'll do that.
We can have a conversation about something, because I would like to chat with whoever about anything.
Actually, we should.
Not on social media, because it sucks.
Yeah, I'd agree after this weekend with all the hot takes with Endgame and Game of Thrones. It's so annoying. It was just good. Just shut up, everybody. Jesus.
There's so much trolling. I don't know. It's just like, it's not a pause. I get so much more out of life when I just interact with people that I meet physically in the street, or like chat with your friends. Like, it's just so much richer. And all the stuff on the internet doesn't give me anything, really. I get nothing out of it. But whatever.
Well, if you want to find me, you can find me at Bo Schwartz, and I'll say hi. I like chatting with people. So you have
a good presence on the internet. So.
I mean, I try to make sure I like to I don't know. I like to engage in conversation too, especially over social media. It's kind of fun, but I don't like all the bullshit that's there.
Why not a real conversation? You need to put your phone number out there more.
Well, I mean, I can't do 30 phone calls in a day or whatever. Not that I get that.
You think your phone will be ringing off the hook that much?
Yeah, maybe not, but you know what I mean. I don't know. There's an efficacy to 200. You're limited to 200 characters or so.
Yeah, sure.
That I sort of appreciate, but as well, not here, but on some of our other shows that I do, there's patron discords. We could set one up for this show too, maybe in the future, and make that as part of the patron thing. So let us know if that's something you'd be into. So yeah, that pretty much covers everything for the show. We're going to take a bow now and get out, but before we do, we usually like to make a joke. It's gonna be hard with Crofton here, because I find when the three of us are together, we can force a frustration level to end the show. But if it's just two of us, we're going to be in agreement, because That's just
Well,
how the
not
dynamic
necessarily. You
works.
start talking about like transhumanism or something, and then I'll get annoyed with you.
I
And
don't got nothing. This was a very it's like this topic was very I'm not gonna say personal. It just felt it's one of the topics I probably take more seriously or have given more thought to. So I don't.
it isn't, you know, and that's what the comment I made about like the personal versus the trends of it. Like, because I find like those are so different. Like, so when it's like the trend of cultural appropriation, I agree. Like, I would say full on bad. Some of the individual things, and like when people do have good intentions and maybe you're unaware, you know, it's harder to just say this is bad. It's a messy, it's a difficult topic, and certainly I don't think there is like a cut and dried way to look at it. It's an evolving thing too. So I mean,
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, I guess I get how you could see it as a very personal thing, especially considered some of your personal experiences, which are relevant.
Yeah, and you know, I don't know. I don't know if at any point I might have been appropriating culture. I'm sure that I did. I'm sure I must have at some point, right? Like I don't mean in this religious sense with Islam, but you know, like I like rap music, and I was more into skateboarder culture. It's hard to know how much of that was, you know, if I wore my pants below my ass.
Yeah, that's true. You did do that.
I listened to a lot of Public Enemy, and
I will
I love Public Enemy so much back in the day. Anyway, so I think maybe we'll just leave it there. We'll say,
yeah, end the show.
yeah. Well, hang on. Like we're gonna end the show on what is it? Get up, get down. 911 is joking, yo town. Get up, get. Actually, you know what is funny?
I feel like you're appropriating culture right now.
I totally like. There's that song about slavery that Public Enemy did called "Can't Trust It."
Please don't sing it.
I'm not going to, but I will say I know all the lines. I could probably rap most of it even now, and I was been listening to that since I was.
We've learned anything about cultural appropriation. If you ever get a public mic where people are like, "Bo, what song do you know? Get up there and sing. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Please don't sing that one," because I feel like you'll be like, everyone will be like, "Ooh, cultural appropriation. I know it when I see it." And Bo rapping about slavery.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like I've been alone. You know, when you sing a song and you're home, like home alone, like I will rap. Can't trust it like all day.
Yeah, that's fine in your own home, but don't be
I can culturally appropriate in the privacy of my own home. I like the song, and I've been listening to it since I was a kid. Like I got it's Public Enemy, The Empire Strikes Black, 91. That's the name of the album.
I didn't know that.
It's a classic album, and I love that song. Can't trust it.
All right, end the show.